Brought to you in association with Grendel Press. This is Werewolf the Podcast, a serial killer drama.
Hi, this is Werewolf the Podcast, and this is Werewolf Will talking. This is no disclaimer, no apology either. The stuff that I do in saying these things is often fucked up and horrendous. Some people get it, others do not. That's perfectly okay. Can I just ask you that if the stories do offend you, then just stop listening to them. It's that easy. They're just not your thing. Keep searching and you will find whatever you want in a story. Just probably not in mine. I promise. There are loads of great podcasts out there. This podcast is about a horrible monster. Me. I don't think like most people. I don't act like the majority of people would or perhaps should. None of what I do is socially correct or reasonable. And that won't change. I mean, I'm not real, am I? I mean, werewolves are not real, are they? Are they? So it's not as if someone real is saying or doing this shit, is it? Is it? He's just making it up. Sorry for the rant for those that I do not offend, or even if you enjoy being offended. You deviants, you. Mwah. So, after all the rant, I have had a certain individual appearing through my podcast now, and some of you listeners have wanted to know a little more about him, so I thought I would introduce him to you. You may have wondered how I could leave my art studio to do my everyday stuff, but even if you're not, you're going to learn why, because it's an important and, I think, a great story. As you well know, I am the greatest living artist that the world has never seen, unrecognised as such at this moment due to the people in, air quotes, inability to deal with the manner of my work. As humanity grows and matures as a species, you will see the significance of my work and get a sense of what I am trying to convey to you. I have an entire floor of my warehouse designated as my studio. On that level, I have a huge number of art installations. The maintenance and the upkeep of those pieces are essential. You know, shit needed to be done all the time, especially when I was away doing other werewolf-related things. I mean, literally, shit would have to be shifted and food would have to be given to the artwork. Living art was a pain in the ass to maintain, but I found the perfect person to do the job. His name is Malcolm, and I suppose he is the evil mastermind's helper from ye olden days literature. If you qualify the things I do as evil, I'm sure most people do. Maybe not you, though. Yeah, you. You get it. You've been listening to me a lot. Yeah, you. You in Tulsa. Oh, and don't think I've not noticed you, the one in Bakersfield. You get it. Oh, and you. Yeah, you know who you are. Yep, I'm pointing at you, the one in Liverpool. Yeah, you. Fuck's sake, man, you need to take a good look at yourself. How do I know you guys get it? I've accessed your browser histories. I learnt a lot about you from those. If I'd not seen the video, I would never have thought anyone could fit an orbital sander in there. Well, let's end the sentence there. Clear your fucking cookies and your cache. Malcolm is my equivalent of all those eagers of all those Frankenstein and Dracula movies of the 50s, but this guy was something even better. A high-level loser needing life validation and something to live for. I gave him that in a brutal and horrific way. No, be fair and hear me out. It was okay to give him beautiful and horrific because he was also beautiful and horrific in person. Malcolm. What a fucking name. It even means a devotee of God, and I was the man's God, and he was devoted to me and there to serve all my wants and needs. This may help you out a little by giving you a picture in prose. Let me describe this guy as I first met him. He was 6'4", but did that thing that some tall men do, that constant hunch in the spine thing. You know, they do to make themselves appear a lot smaller than they really are. He had shoulder-length, rusty, ginger, greasy hair. No discernible style had ever been cut or created with those locks. A barber or a hairdresser had never been unfortunate enough to have his hair eat his comb. The last person other than himself to ever touch or cut it was his poor mum when he was a child, and that had been with a bowl placed on his head and then trimmed around. I'd seen his school photo from when he was 15. Yeah, it was awful. Neither has any product but Poundland washing up liquid ever been used to do that once a week clean on his head. That is, if it is washed once a week. I was never brave enough to ask for the details. His skin is pallid and he has acne, and with that the acne scars of a squeezer, and he has really no idea of personal hygiene. I'm trying to help him with these things, I promise, I really am. More for my own olfactory protection than any real kind of care for the man. He wears glasses, but these are no ordinary glasses. They are those thick bottle-bottomed motherfuckers that are so heavy on his head that the steel aviator frames have created a permanent step on the bridge of his nose. And we've not finished there with the description of these wonderful spectacles that are truly a spectacle. They also weigh so much that they spend a lot of time being pushed up his snitch and then travelling back down to the crusty step cut for them. And surprisingly, they were not held together by clear tape. I know, a shock, huh? That is what you expected. No, these poor frames have been sat on and squished underneath his arse that many times that they're so warped, your attention is drawn to them and not his feckless face. The final thing to be said is that we cannot even help him by following the trite thing we see in films. You know, that scene where the nerd takes off the glasses and suddenly they're beautiful. Nah. Those glasses hide a pair of blinky, roomy eyes. In Malcolm's case, not hot when off, just more horror. Let us continue. Honestly, it's worth it. That nose is bulbous and full of blackheads that the lack of washing mixed with overzealous sebum release promotes. When we first met, he was a heavy drinker, but I soon beat that habit out of him because he couldn't function as a caretaker of my most valuable things when drunk. I replaced his love of whiskey with a love of cocaine and amphetamine, which means he now needs me just to fulfill his habit. He will never let me down for many reasons, but the main one is that he is addicted to my free drugs. This change in the drug of choice means that the red and hemorrhaged vessels in his nose are fading, and they're being replaced on either side of it with sunken bulbous eyes, those eyes of the coke fiend. He looks young for a man in his early 30s with acne and a baby face, so he's tried to grow a moustache and a beard. And I have to reiterate that he's tried to grow. It makes him look, it makes him look like he's tried to grow a beard, wispy hair everywhere. The shame of it is, he could actually be an acceptably looking guy if he had an ability to groom and present himself. To add to his lack of sexiness, he has big red blemishes on either side of his nose. He had done the internet doctor thing and thought it was eczema there. When I brought home a real doctor for dinner, the eczema got looked at and found to be athlete's foot on the face. He had a foot fungus on his fucking face. The sad thing was that he was feeding the fucking foot fungus with the moisturiser he was trying to treat the eczema with. This treatment was making it much worse and much more horrendous to look at. His physique was weird as well, tall and gangly with a pot belly. His limbs were like knotted bits of string and his knuckles, due to his posture, were by his knees. He was a hunchback of sorts. There wasn't like a literal lump, but his posture was hunched due to his upper spine kyphosis. He was a hunchback like all the great Igors of literature. He also had a considerable sway back, just above his hips to match this, making his spine look like a squished S from the sign. Kyphosis at the top, and lordosis at the bottom. The lordosis promoted his little pot belly, making it stick forward in front of the man. He looked He looked like a chimp in his upper body, and it was a strange contrast to a pair of the longest legs you've ever seen on a man. He looked like he was standing on stilts as his shins seemed overly long. Oh, and he had fuck-off huge feet to add to his grotesque nature. He was a size 18. Sadly, what they say about men with enormous feet is not true. No, I'm not going to try and be funny here. You know the joke you're asked by someone who is never actually funny. Men with big feet have what? You reply and think, big cock. Then the person asking the question gets to embarrass you in front of everyone by saying, no, they've got big socks. Then they point out that you are disgusting because of what you said. Anyways, big feet men don't always have a huge cock. Malcolm really didn't. It was tiny. And when I say tiny, I mean tiny. It was so small, and because he did no pubic grooming, the poor little thing was lost deep in the shag pile of the red hairy mass of pubes. If it was an inch smaller, it would have been inverted. He also had no idea of how to dress. The poor fucker had socks and sandals. The first time I met him. Not only socks and sandals, but white socks and brown sandals. It hurts me to remember the image in my mind. They should have been white socks and brown sandals, but they weren't. The socks were no longer white. He had his dirty, socked, massive feet in the biggest pair of what we would call Jesus sandals anyone could imagine. Big, brown leather sandals with big, brass buckles. I mean, a herd of cows must have died to make these fuckers. I think to get trousers to fit correctly, he would have had to have them tailored to fit. That was not a thing he would ever consider, so his grey nylon Farrah trousers terminated well above his ankles. These pants were not, as we would say as kids, half-mast, but they were 3/4 length. I mean, it was a look, a real look. Oh, and he wore baggy shirts as a rule to try and hide that body beneath them. It didn't work. We've not finished describing this unfortunate fuck. He'd several nervous tics that ruled his life. The constant push of the glasses up the nose, even when they had not slipped, and being incredibly blinky were just two of them. Had to get rid of one of the others. His hands would often be down the front of the trousers, rummaging in his crotch. We had to stop that one. It made me feel very uncomfortable when we were speaking. Let's finish it with the final straws that the awful God he believed in and prostrated himself in front of had given him. He had a lisp and a high, effeminate voice. Poor bastard. But do you know what? He was fucking perfect for me. The ideal guy to manipulate by the perfect God. Me. He worshipped at the altar of will and was loyal and particularly good at his job. So a slave to me he was. On top of all these things, I had his addiction and the hard drives full of the kiddie porn that he had a heroic tendency for. Yeah, usually he would have just been a fucking statistic, but watching a man with this much self-loathing was a beautiful thing in itself. He hated himself, and I could make him feel worse about himself by having this power over his head. He was trapped in this horror of a life. He knew he could never escape. He couldn't even commit suicide, as I would release his hours of horribleness to the public. He would have the embarrassment of his dear old mum dealing with it. I would never torture someone as well as this man could torture himself. He was the perfect slave. It was great. It was a beautiful thing to be part of. I had discovered him outside a primary school in Manchester. He was, well, as you know, a perverted bastard, and was standing in the bushes at the edge of the play area, bent at the hips and sweating. His right hand was in the pocket of his trousers in perpetual locomotion as he studied the youngsters before him. It was sheer luck that I'd found him. I was hungry and looking for a small snack myself. As I turned the corner to the fenced play area ready to take a small treat, I was shocked to see the brown parka jacket in amongst the trees. My posit had laughed, and we both sensed the sexual excitement flowing in waves off the man's body as he masturbated in hiding from the children. I stood and waited for some time as he pounded on himself. I felt it would have been rude not to let him finish. Blue balls are a very uncomfy problem. After a few more strokes, I sensed his bodily release as he ejaculated, then the horror and disgust in himself following the act. This was far too interesting to walk away from. I just had to know more. He had just had an orgasm and now was disgusted with himself for the orgasm. Orgasms are one of my favourite things. Had to know more. This guy was a proper sick fucker in his head, and I love sick fuckers, especially those that also hate themselves for being a sick fucker. So much fun. After finishing his bodily eruptions, he sank to his knees and slunk onto the floor. He now lay there. He just lay in the mud under the leylandii trees of the hedge and started to sob and cry. The posit looked up at me as he pointed at the guy. My posit is my wolf soul. He's a separate entity to me. We combine together to become werewolves. If you listen to other episodes, you'll know a lot more about Fen, my posit. Please go and refer to other episodes, because I have to repeat this every time and it's starting to get a little bit, difficult. What the fuck is this guy's problem? He's not actually hurt anyone, he's just had a wank, he posited into my mind. It does make you think. Okay, a horrible thing has just taken place. Is it something wrong? Yes. But this grown man has just had a wank over prepubescent children. Well, he didn't actually have a physical over them. I looked over his shoulder into the playground. The kids looked to be between 6 and maybe 10. My belly rumbled. I was fucking hungry. Was it better that I wanted to eat them, or was it better that he wanted to fuck them? It was a new question in my mind that I had to have answered. Had he really caused any harm to the children? They had no clue about him, so had he in fact caused them any damage? He had not assaulted them or even revealed himself or his intentions to them. Obviously, it would have been very different if he'd exposed himself or touched a child. That would have been his end, but was having a simple wank over a situation without any engagement with the kids really a negative thing? Maybe this way he would never actually hurt or touch a child? Perhaps this was his way of dealing with his issues and never harming the kid themselves? A little bit of deep philosophy that I had not really considered. I shared these thoughts with the posit. I could not give a fuck, to be honest, Will. It's what he feels about the situation that's interesting to me. I don't even want to kill this cunt. I want to see what and why makes him feel this way. He tortures himself. Okay, I smiled. I wandered over to the prostrate man and stood over him as he cried into his hands. I stood for a while, thinking he would notice me at some point. He didn't. At this point, I was getting all ADHD'd and started to whistle and look around the area to ensure we weren't being watched. Still nothing from the broken man before me.
What you doing, mister?
I asked in a stupid, childish voice. The man froze and became silent, and did not look up from the hands that he held in front of his face. He was actually doing very well, as I noticed his internal panic, but no evidence of it on the surface. I poked him with the toe of my boot. What are you doing, mister? I asked again, but did not add any childish twang to the question this time. He slowly turned towards me. His mopey wet eyes were full of fear and revulsion.
I'm sorry,
he said.
I'm so sorry.
For what? I asked. You were just having a wank over some kids, weren't you? What's wrong with that? It's not like you actually had a wank over a kid, is it? He turned from his muddy spot to look at me. I think he thought I was playing with him at this point.
Please don't get the police involved. I've got money. I will pay you to not say anything.
He begged. I smiled at him. I don't want your money. Let's just say I want your time and effort. Within a few weeks he had sold his house and added his funds to my considerable wealth and moved in with me to my warehouse flat. I made sure he had his own space and did not need to see him unless I chose to see him myself. I cleaned him up and taught him how to dress and care for himself. I got him in the gym to train and get his posture near human. I taught him body language methods and how to present as a confident person. I took him to the best doctors and physios, showed him how to live well and tricked all into thinking he was a decent chap. I got him the eye surgery that would allow him to throw his glasses away. I took him to the local whorehouse where he could pick what looked the youngest of what was on offer to satiate his needs without defiling the youngsters that would suffer. Laughingly, he began to think that we were friends. He felt that I cared. Strangely. And to be honest, not at all. I needed him to be the man I made. I needed him to serve my needs as I wanted. I introduced him to my ways and my works of art. As a blackmail object, I found his collections of kiddie porn and ensured he would never wipe the evidence from the world of his perverse and sinful pleasures. I could kill him or destroy his life in so many easy ways if he did not follow my instructions. He had to worship me and put up with anything I brought down upon him. I was a beneficent God in many ways. Thanks for listening. I know there's some difficult topics to deal with there for you, but hey, life's difficult.
Brought to you in association with Grendel Press. This is Werewolf the Podcast, a serial killer drama.